If somebody's like a prankster in real life, there's a good chance they're still going to be a prankster in the spirit world. Only now they can have a lot more fun. And this is one of the things that when I finally found a book by Allan Kardec, he wrote like a book of mediums and a bunch of other stuff. He was a scientist right as table tipping was starting to become all the rage, and he tried to debunk it. But then he
Hmm.
found out there was something legitimate to these things, and he did debunk some seances. He did debunk some uh, table tipping, but then he found the reality of it and started to write books that were channeled books. He'd have groups of people get together and they do automatic writing or table tipping, and they would write basically channeled books on information, and a lot of the stuff that's written in those books match my experiences. I'm like, finally, finally something is out there. And one of the things that gave me the biggest laugh is why, when you bring in like the preacher, it makes things worse. It's because if you got somebody in the house that's a prankster and a jokester, and now you bring in a priest to do the exorcism, they're going to go, right on, man, this is awesome. They're just going to stir it up even more.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Into the Pit. And I'm very excited today because I have Mr. Kaedrich Olsen on here. We are going to talk about a subject that is near and dear to my heart, which is, of course, the paranormal. But you teach people to coexist with the paranormal.
That's correct. Yes. Thank you for having me on. I mean, I'm looking forward to this. But the reason why I put it that way is I grew up with the paranormal. To me, the paranormal is everywhere. It's a normal part of our world. It's everywhere. It's here all the time. And the more I've worked with people over the years encountering paranormal issues, paranormal problems, or concerns, it's like the paranormal's always been there. It's always been around them. And it's not that we're going to be casting the paranormal stuff out of their house. We're not going to be casting the paranormal out of their life. It's a natural part of this world. So I teach people just how to adapt and how to fit in and communicate, and coexist is really the right word, so that we don't have to throw away things or push things away, that you awaken another part of yourself that's been shut off since childhood, and realize like, oh, me being able to connect with the natural world is completely natural as well. So that's how I've turned it, as I train people to coexist with the paranormal, so we're not thinking it's something separate or something evil or something that needs to be removed from our life, that it is a natural normal part of our life. Yeah.
I've been in the paranormal myself for several years, and I get different answers. And I'd like to know it, when it comes to ghosts, spirits, things like that. Are they actually a human spirit? Are these almost like a recording of the past? Is this energy or these demons? I mean, what are we experiencing?
That's a really good question. And I've got sort of a complex answer, and I'll put it in a nutshell for us all. It is all energy. Everything is energy everywhere. Even matter and form is
Mm-hmm.
nothing but energy. It's just little bits of light moving at less than the speed of light. I believe it was Deepak Chopra that put it that way, but it's brilliant. It's a brilliant way to put it. And spiritual energy is basically the same kind of stuff as physical energy, just not as dense. It's less dense. It's it's still coherent. That's the interesting thing. It's self-coherent, like holographic light is coherent. It still maintains its shape. And when you're asking, is it people? Is it recording? Is it demonic activity? It's a very interesting way of putting it, of how this energy gets expressed. Because I have like 9 rules of interacting with the paranormal. And one of them is that we are not spiritual beings having a physical experience like we hear about. We're spiritual and physical beings. We're both having a dynamic experience. What happens to one affects the other. So our body and our spirit are intricately interconnected with each other. And when the body dies, that spirit has the ability to remain coherent and continue on. And that is what we'll experience as sometimes ghosts. Another type of ghost is if we go through a traumatic moment, parts of our soul will fragment off, little bits will get stuck in a moment, living that moment over and over. We call that a revenant.
Hmm.
And when we go to some of these hauntings where murders took place or some bad things took place, we'll encounter a revenant. It'll look like a human, sound like a human, but it's stuck in like a loop mode. It's stuck playing that moment over and over again. And some of these places do have residual energy of things that happened, things that were going on there, different parties or different things that other people experienced. And certain sensitive people can tap into that resonant energy, and that resonant energy will play back like a tape recorder. Now, when
Hmm.
it comes to demonic activity, we human beings are powerfully creative entities. We make things, we create through our observation, and we also create through our belief. And this is what I've encountered so many times with so many clients is there may be some legit paranormal activity going on in the house, or maybe a revenant or a spirit, somebody passing through. But because we've been trained to have a misperception about what the paranormal is, we're told that it's only demonic activity, there are only devils, all these evil things about it.
Yeah.
We tend to get into our own emotional cycle of creating these balls of energy, creating these entities that they're real for want of a better term, but we created them and they're doing just exactly as we expect them to do. And we can do this at the collective level, at like a community level. So we're all experiencing this thing that's awful, it's terrible, it's frightening, and that's reinforcing our belief, which is reinforcing its creation and its energetic existence. So when we're asking, are these humans demons or what are they? It's all of the above because all of those things exist. The paranormal realm is just a myriad of so many different types of beings and entity. It's actually quite beautiful what's out there.
But it necessarily doesn't have to be the fact that a soul is trapped there, just being tormented forever. It could just be a remnant energy of an activity that happened, but each one is going to be different.
Exactly.
Gotcha, gotcha. And I've even had people come up with the theory that we're actually experiencing another dimension where you're seeing like the frequency somehow changes and you're able to see another dimension that's going. I believe there's other dimensions going around us right now.
Absolutely. I grew up in a neighborhood with lots of shadow people in it. Even
Hmm.
people who didn't believe in ghosts or the paranormal would come over and they're like, what's with the people that aren't there? It's like you can see them out of the corner of your eye and then you go to look and they
Hmm.
disappear. Well, they'll run out in front of the car and they're just not there. And I've never had a bad experience with these shadow people whatsoever. It's more like they notice us, we notice them. There's some sort of a way that we cannot communicate with each other. I don't quite understand it, but we coexist. And it's my belief that I can't prove or validate, but it's just my belief that those are just other types of people existing in another dimension. And for whatever reason, we're having a little thinning of that layer between, and we could
Mm.
briefly just kind of experience each other. And I believe, again, can't confirm it, I believe they're just as curious and weirded out about us as we are of them.
Well, I know talking to light workers and people that work with chakras, how they talk about you can change your actual frequency. Everything we see is on a certain frequency. If it is like this microphone in front of me, if somehow we were able to change the frequency of it, I could see something totally different here. It may be a house plant. I don't know. One point I wanted to make, when we're going to do an investigation and we are able to get certain evidence, say voices and things like that, um, is it that sometimes there's an actual spirit, human spirit there that we can communicate, and then sometimes we just happen to accidentally catch this activity or this whatever happened there before is playing itself back, and we just did get catch what was going on at the right time.
That's a very curious thing. That's really where I would almost deviate to where the psychics come in.
Mm-hmm.
because the technology is great. We have some very good results from it, and I love that it's tangible, concrete evidence that we're coming up with. But the context, we're missing the context. So, example, you'll have an EVP of somebody saying something in a room. How do we know it's not just a recording of the residual energy playing back, or if it's an actual person in the room saying this or that? And that's where if we have a psychic in the room, and I'll defer, not deviate, I'll defer to the psychic because they can communicate with that spirit and really have more of a dialogue, an energetic dialogue to see what its mind is like. Like, for example, if it's a residual energy, you're going to have zero dialogue whatsoever. If
Mm-hmm.
it's a revenant, it's only going to know that one moment that it's stuck in. It's not going to know anything outside of all of that. Whereas if it's a human being, an intact soul, you can actually have a fairly decent conversation with it. You can get more information and what it is, who it is, why they're there. And that just comes from being able to tune in and communicate with that entity and find out what's going on. Then you can correlate that with the EVP or the other type of recordings, the spirit box and such. You can then correlate that and put those pieces together and go, here's what's going on.
That's what I love about having a psychic on the team is sometimes she'll say, go to this room and turn on your recorder and take pictures or have the video camera going in this specific area, ask this specific question, and we'll get that answer. And then there's times where we'll leave the room and the customer will say, we've had this happen at 10 o'clock every night, and you might happen to catch it happen that time. You can ask all the questions in the world, but it's only going to say or do whatever it usually does at that time.
Exactly. And that might be a recording that you're catching if it's
Mm-hmm.
doing that same at that same time. And a lot of this is born out of course, I grew up with spirits all around. I grew up in a haunted house. I grew up going to a spiritualist church. I didn't have the technology.
Mm-hmm.
I just had what I was receiving and what the people around me were receiving, what we're getting through. And as I started to explore the technology, like I've got a K2 meter on the back of the shelf here behind me. Like one day when I was sitting at my desk and I had it on just to see what was going on, see what's in the room, it starts bleeping off into the red. And I'm like, I feel the room, I scope out the room, and I'm like, there's nothing here. And finally, it calms down. I'm cool. I get back to my work, and then it starts going back up into the red. I'm like, okay, what's here? Nothing. I'm looking around. What? Finally, I realized my cell phone is a little too close to the K2 meter.
Yep.
I'm like, got it. I moved the cell phone, no problems. Conversely, I've had the K2 meter out and I'm having a great old conversation. There's somebody in the room. We're having a good connection. And I'm like, nothing is coming off the K2. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, just for fun, would you just make it go blip? And then I might get like a yellow blip out of it. So
Yeah.
I've kind of learned to more trust myself over the years. And if I get something on the tech, that's great. Like some of these phone apps, they're fun to play with, but I'm still skeptical. But
I
yet I'd rather have my own pickup with that first and then
yeah.
use that as a corollary rather than the primary.
Yeah. There's some great tools out there, and they're good for kind of giving you a I don't know how to put it, but you can kind of measure what's going on with that tool.
Mhm.
Uh, a lot of times, especially with the K2, I'm able to find like old exposed wiring and things like that.
Exactly.
You might find like they'll have a security camera on. Well, the infrared will set that meter off, and people take that because they're not really, really checking out the place and see what everything is around them. They're quick to call that paranormal. You know, we found that out, having those cameras that we set up. It's like every time you pass by that camera, boy, that thing would peg out. It's like, that's the camera doing it. It's not something paranormal. Or I found a house, they were having supposedly all this activity and everything going on, and they were seeing things. they were seeing things because the EMF in that house was crazy. They had this old wiring. The house is probably from the 1920s. And you remember when they used to use that cloth stuff around the wiring?
Yep, yep. There's not very good insulation at
Yeah,
all.
not good insulation at all.
There's no
Somebody
shielding.
get this, they literally cut some of it out of the way, and they took the wires off of a I don't know if it used to be a lamp or whatever, and they wrapped it around it and then would turn it on, and that's how they got the electricity to that light. And I'm like, what the? And they had a transformer literally over the top of their backyard. I mean, you could go out there, and if you jumped high enough, you could tap it with your hand.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And I'm telling them, I don't know how they got away with that. That should be dangerous.
Uh-huh.
But I maybe it might have caused some paranormal activity, but for me, I think it was just the things they were experiencing were from the actual EMF and not so much paranormal.
You're absolutely right. And that's one of the things that I do like the K2 meters for and all the EMF readers for, is because if a room is being flooded with negative ions, it'll
Mm,
give a pseudo paranormal experience to the people in that room. It'll give them that weird creep out feeling, and that weird creep out feeling could be a slippery slope for their mind and their perception to start. I'm not going to say imagining things, but maybe exaggerating things that's going on in the mind. And like I said, we are powerfully creative people. And if we start exaggerating or we're really compounding, like, ooh, there's something creepy here, there's something awful, we'll start creating this energy manifestations around us to reinforce that inner belief when it's just loose wiring.
hmm.
So those K2 meters are great. They're like, no, wiring in your room sucks. No wonder it feels creepy.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of those things that they sell people, I think it's just to make money off of some folks' ignorance or their overzealousness to think this is going to capture evidence. I've
Hmm.
I've had stuff that I used it, and I'm going, this, I think this is just a bunch of baloney. There's, I can explain why this thing is working. I could maybe build something like this if I had the know-how,
Hmm.
but my tape recorder, or my digital recorder, and my camera, and my video camera, those are my best tools. Everything else usually gets left at home.
I have found a weird advantage to using some of these cell phone apps. Like I've got a few of them on my phone right now, and I'm skeptical as all heck. Even the ghost boxes that run through the radio
Yeah,
channels, I'm skeptical as all heck. But I've gotten good results from it. I've
yeah,
gotten some validating results, so it opens the door to that skepticism. But I've got a theory, and the more I practice this theory, the more it's starting to vet itself out. It goes back to the idea that there is no veil between the worlds,
right.
that the paranormal is all around us all the time, that what we perceive as the veil is our own mind tuning it out. We just close it off, we go into our own world. It's not real, it's not here, I tune it out. But if somebody has one of these apps on their phone and they start picking up some words, it'll give them that creep out feeling maybe. But then it'll
Yeah,
open their minds up to, ooh, maybe there is something in the room. What's going on? And then it starts to open up their mind and their ability to perceive. And in a weird sense, just by using one of these apps or the ghost box, you may actually be creating an unintentional seance because you're opening your consciousness and your awareness to what's going on around you, and it feels like you're drawing spirits to you, which you might be. So it's kind of a weird little side effect. Like again, I'm still experimenting with. I'm still trying to vet the validity of this, but it seems that's kind of a fun way of using these little bits of technology is to provoke us into a state where we're receptive and open.
now I might sound a little contradictory here,
Great.
but I think if you use those things in the proper way, and when I say in the proper way, don't take every little thing that it does as paranormal activity, but if
Yes.
if you can rule out any kind of coincidence, say like you've got a ghost box, spirit box, and you're asking questions, and you ask a specific question, and it gives you a specific answer to that, and it's not something that's obviously going to come up on the airwaves, uh, then you could say, oh, that could be evidence. I'll give you another example. We have a REM pod,
Mhm.
and I could see how that thing could go off on its own, but we had it set up in a room, and this house is pretty old. In fact, it used to be a post office at one time. But I'll tell you how old the post office was. They used to use Morse code to send back messages, right?
Nice.
So this thing's going off, and I told the group, I said, that sounds like Morse code, the way it was beeping, because it was doing that beep 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 beep, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
And I said, well, let's try something. So I Googled, and I found that there was an app that you could put in a sentence in Morse code, and it would do the beeps for you. So I asked a specific question, and then that thing would beep right after it, like it was answering it.
Hmm.
I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. And I couldn't keep up with it. I'm not intelligent enough to know how to understand Morse code that quick. But we went into town the next day and went to a little store. They're selling, uh, stuff, little trinkets and stuff, what have you, souvenirs. And there was a bracelet with the name of the town, and underneath it, in little jewels, was spelt out the name of the town in Morse code.
Nice.
And I'm like, wow, that's kind of a cool coincidence.
Yep.
Could it have been? I wouldn't exactly present that as actual evidence. I might put it on our social media and say, what do you think? Maybe somebody knows a little bit more about it than I do that could explain it to me. Whether it was or not, I don't know. That's why you won't find I put up a whole lot of evidence when we go to our website or our social media. And like I say, I do put it on there and say, what is your opinion? If I feel like it's sufficient enough. My EVPs, I will put those up because those are cool.
Those are cool. Yeah.
Uh, we went to a house in Spring, Texas, and me and another guy was sleeping on one end of this house, and the girls in the group were sleeping on the other end. The house is empty. I mean, completely empty. The people had moved out. They were like, didn't want to have nothing to do with this place no more. And I let the digital recorder keep going in our room, and I put it up on the window. We're on the second floor, and you expect you might get some road noise or something. I heard what sounded like sex going on all night long. A woman going, oh, oh, and I'm like, did you sneak a girl in here last night or something? No, no. And none of the ladies had pulled anything on us. I'm like, well, that's pretty interesting. It went on for 20, 30 minutes. So
That's awesome.
and you teach people how to do proper seances?
Absolutely. It's a big course that I've got online. I've got a certification course. It's like 5 weeks long that will take you through everything about how to set up the room, how to set up your own mindset so that you're operating in sacred space internally and externally. I go through all the rules of the paranormal. And I even teach people in the course how to use everything from a pendulum to a Ouija board and what to do if anything goes wrong. I think it's one of the unique things that's out there with other seance training is people aren't teaching what to do if something goes wrong, how you shut it down, how you shift the energy, how you
Mhm.
clear things out and do cleansing and clearing. And so either it's with a course that way or one-on-one or group seances, but definitely teaching seance and teaching people how to connect is an important part of what I do.
And do you use that in paranormal investigations, or is that just kind of something you set aside as itself?
it's kind of funny is when I'm training paranormal investigators how to be safe, because I've got a paranormal training course
Mm-hmm.
for investigators, I actually teach them how to use seance as preventative care
Oh, wow.
so that they can learn to do seance before they go to places so that they can build rapport with higher level beings or protective entities. And when they get into their locations, if something goes a little bit sideways, a little bit haywire, they know how to set up a bit of a seance, not only to communicate with the spirits that are in the house, but also how to bring in those protective higher level entities to make sure things go well. So, definitely, seance could be a very important part of paranormal investigation.
How long does it normally take to prepare for a seance?
Oh, it really depends. uh, for me, it's actually can like when I'm working with clients, it could be so instantaneous that I don't even think about it. We're just doing it.
Oh,
We're
wow.
right there. Because here's the thing about seance to keep in mind is it goes back to that veil concept.
Mm-hmm.
In the seance, we're really prepping the person internally, the space externally, so we can lower that veil. We can open the dimension, the portals between worlds. But like I said, there is no veil. There is nothing there. It's really tuning ourselves into it. And the seance process is a means of getting yourself into a sacred mindset, into safe space, so that when you tune your mind into things, you're in a place that's safe and secure. And you're now allowing yourself to be open and receptive and communicative to these type of beings in an energy space that is conducive for good things to happen rather than fear-based or anything going sideways.
Yeah. And if I came to you and I wanted to contact a specific loved one, how are you able to do that?
I wish I had a good answer for that. But when we do a spirit reading session, we'll sit down and talk about like the challenges that the individual is facing, some of the difficulties they're going through. We'll talk a little bit about that person that they want to connect with. And then I will use my guides working with their guides to see if we can connect outward. And then if somebody starts to come through, I'll start saying, here, I'm getting this, I'm getting that, I'm seeing this, I'm seeing that. Does this make any sense to you? And
Hmm.
that validation process is what helps to tune in and connect better. And sometimes it works beautifully. Sometimes we're having a great conversation, we're getting the information we need to. People are really able to reconnect and get the closure that they need. Other times, that person on the other side's just not ready. Things aren't tuning in, they're not ready to connect, and I'll connect with their guides, I'll connect with other loved ones, and we'll find out what's going on. And this is one of the cool things about seance is there are times when the spirits on the other side need our help for whatever reason. They're stuck, they're kind of lost, they're not sure what the heck's going on. And when we do the seance and we tune in, we can talk to those spirits, we can talk to their guides, the guides for that spirit, and find out exactly if there is something we can do on our side to let go. And I hate to say it, but a majority of that time is
Hmm.
we on our side of the veil haven't done our mourning. We haven't done our grief properly. We're stuck. We're holding on to them. I wish you wouldn't go. I wish you wouldn't leave. Would you still be here with me? And that sort of traps them a little bit.
Yeah.
And when we're doing our grief, when we're doing our mourning, we can let go. That lets them be free to go do their transition process. Then they can come back and say, hey, thanks for that. That was awesome that you did that. Here's what's going on. Now they connect so much better. So part of my work is sometimes helping people mourn.
I worried about that because my little brother had ended his own life several years ago, and I know for the first several years I was constantly trying to talk to him, and I wanted him to still be there. And then one day I thought, man, I must be really torturing him, and I hope that I've let go to the point where he can go, he can move on. I'm not trying to hold his energy here anymore. But it is kind of nice to every once in a while say, hey, I'm thinking about you. And and I also hold a lot of guilt because I feel like I wasn't here for him when he really needed me. How many people do you help let go of that guilt? Because I know a lot of people feel that same way.
It's pretty common. It's pretty common. Like when you're talking, for example, I got images of something to do with the sky, like just big, wide open, bright sky. I almost wanted to say airplanes, but that was more of a metaphor for me, my own little symbols, saying that there's like the sky is wide open is really what comes through. I think he's doing okay. I think he's doing fine. He's just kind of he's trying to figure out what his form of heaven is. I guess that's what the imagery is. He's just trying to figure out what his form of heaven is and what his existence is. And when you were talking about guilt, again, I have no idea what this is. This is just something come through, but it was almost felt like there was some sort of food involved, some sort of like maybe fruit or something. I almost want to say like apricot or orange. It's weird. I hate doing the kind of vagueness that comes through like that apricot orange. There's an uncle up here with a name of G. I don't want to go to that. I don't want to do that. But you know, and this is just me kind of putting pieces together, and let's see how this sticks. In Norse tradition, which I tend to follow, and in other traditions around the world, they have a feast for the dead, where you can gather family and friends around, and you share. It's like you do a potluck. You share food together, and you give a plate. Everybody puts a little bit of the food they brought onto a plate, and they put that on the altar for the loved one, and they can tell stories about their person, whether it's celebrating their life, not mourning their death, but celebrating their life. And then you raise a toast. Everybody, does like a hail this or says, we wish you well, and share that energy so that it helps to let go. And I'm wondering if it wouldn't hurt to do like a little bit of a celebration feast in honor of your little brother, to give that energy, to give that push that might help him out. I wonder if that's what's kind of coming through as I'm putting those pieces together.
It's funny that you bring up Norse because that's kind of our family heritage. And I've really tried to connect with that over the last several years. In fact, I have several runes I've had tattooed on my body.
Nice.
Uh, and that does make sense. Probably something that I could gather the family together to do. Because I know my daughter, she really, really loved her uncle, and I think that would help her. And she feels really, really bad, and she doesn't take death very well. She holds on to it for a long, long time, and I do too. To be fair, I mean, this is going on 22 years ago, and I still find myself crying from time to time. It's it's very difficult, especially when you have a sibling that you're really supposed to be protecting and I'm not here.
It may or may not be my place to say this, so take it with that grain of salt. The decision he made was his, not
Yeah.
yours. And there's nothing you probably could have done. I'm pretty sure that, like 97% sure, nothing you could have done ever to change his mind. And I know that 3% is going to linger out there, but he's got that sense of reassurance that he fills in that last 3%. This is not on you. This, wow, it's even okay. Weird, bizarre question. Who's the older lady that's over there with him? Is there like an aunt or grandmother or
Mm.
somebody?
Well, my grandma passed away this last year.
Brownies? Does brownies mean anything?
Brownies. It'll probably click later on.
Because it came with a strong smell and a taste and feel of brownies. But she's reassuring that there's nothing that any really. It's interesting they're talking from over here today to my left. Um, this is going to sound even bizarre. That was kind of like the appointed time.
Hmm.
That was planned. Interesting. Now there's a guide coming through from this other side. Here we go. We're definitely hopping in. He came here to experience some of those challenges. He came here with that intention. Got it. He's still teaching you. That's what it is. He's still teaching you. Did you ever experience that when, even though he was your little brother, he was teaching you stuff quite a bit of the time?
Kind of seemed that way.
He's still doing that.
I'm gonna
This is
tell you,
about a
he, he
lesson.
he seemed to be a lot more mature in a lot of things than I was, even though I was 7 years older than him. I mean, he took care of money better than anybody I ever knew. You know, he could save. He could build stuff. He taught himself how to play guitar. You know, he was just one of those kind of guys. When he was interested in something, he learned it, and if he wasn't interested in it, he didn't care.
The being that's coming in from over here. I'm sorry if we go to wacky woo woo land. This is
Oh
kind of
no,
what I
it's
do.
okay.
They sort of crystalline. He's sort of giving crystalline transmission. It's really weird, but he's basically saying that everything that was done was in order. Everything was planned out, and it fell into place as it was supposed to be done. And part of that was a lesson for you and the family, not necessarily in letting go, but this is a weird contrary example, is that sometimes on the surface when things don't seem to be working out right, they're working perfectly well. So it's an interesting one to almost as if they're saying trust the process, even though it seems bumpy and even though it seems bumpy and discordant and hairy. Wow. Trust the process, even with some of the things that you're going through right now. Trust the process. It's really weird, but the lesson that he's trying to give is sometimes the most important beneficial things come from those times when things aren't going well.
This is definitely one of those times.
And who your brother just popped in to say something right just now. He says, stop resisting it, stop fighting it, just kind of go with the process as it's happening. That the more you're fighting it and the more you're resisting it and the more you're not wanting to engage with it, you're headbutting it, that actually you're making the turbulence worse than if you were to just say, F it, I'm just going to go with it. And we'll just see what happens. And we're going to ride through this storm as it happens. He said that will actually make things a whole lot simpler.
Hmm. Wow. It makes a lot of sense too.
And I want you to know that this guy that came in over here to talk about your brother is actually with you too. He's not just your brother's teacher, he's with you to teach too. And the grandmother type lady that pops up over here is like, stop worrying so much about your brother. We got him. He's okay. You know, she's giving she transitioned a whole lot easier than he did. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
She went over pretty simple. She probably knew something about the spiritual world and spiritual stuff, is my guess.
You know, I guess the beautiful part about their passing is that they all died on my grandparents' property. So my grandpa passed away first. Oh well, I'm say first. My brother passed away, and then my grandpa a few years ago passed away, and he passed away in his bed. And then my grandmother, she just passed away this last year in her bed. So I feel like they're always there. And even my mom, who I thought didn't believe in any of this stuff, she says she'll see lights around the property all the time. So
Yes. Yeah, they're hanging around quite a bit. They love it there. And they're not trapped there, by the way. They come and go as they please. Your grandpa is a little bit sad about leaving the place because he really loved it there. And so he doesn't like to go. He likes to hang out there quite a bit more. But yeah, you're absolutely right about those little lights. That's them just hanging out. And that's a good moment just to kind of recognize and acknowledge that they're there and, just say, hey, how are you doing? Love you guys. It's awesome that you're still here.
and I love that place. I practically grew up there. I spent nearly every weekend there with my grandparents. And then during the summers when my mom and dad both were working and I was too young to take care of myself, I always wanted to stay over there. Mm. Had a lot of fun out there. A lot of fun.
And was there like a young boy that you know of that died? Somebody younger, like preteen age by any chance?
It died on the property.
Or yeah, maybe on the property, or not necessarily the property, but some preteen boy that you knew that died or knows you. Is that
Um,
ringing any bell at all? Because he just popped in the room, just like right here.
um, who trying to think. Well, I have several friends that passed away at an early age, but they weren't preteen. Trying to think who else. I did have some friends that died in their teenage years, though.
It's almost like he has a speech impediment. Like the
Hmm.
words don't come out so clearly.
It'll ring a bell with me. It will. I know it will. Um, can't think at the moment.
And believe it or not, there's not really a message from him. It's just kind of like, I'm still here. Things are still going on. Yeah, he's not a guide. He's just a friend. It's just some friend, I guess. Just kind of hang out every now and then. You might notice some tinkering with stuff around your house because he likes to hang out with you still. So he might tinker with some stuff around the house sometimes. You might also be inclined to think it's like a house spirit or nature spirit, but it's not. It's this kid that's just kind of hanging out.
Hmm.
Leave him a bit of candy. He likes candy.
Now, I don't know if this will ring a bell with you, but we did an investigation at the Yorktown Hospital. And while I was there, there was from my psychic friend telling me this, there was a spirit of a child that had been in a wheelchair who had looked at me kind of like a fatherly figure and attached himself to me and went home with me. But he didn't mean to do this, but he was causing me to have severe stomach problems. And I mean, I had a pain. It felt like a knife was going into me. And yeah, I went to three different doctors. They all did all these tests on me. Nobody could figure out what was wrong. All they wanted to do was give me pain pills. And, that's bad news for me because I have addictive personality. But we were able to help this child pass on.
Good.
And I just wonder if that might be that spirit.
Nope.
No.
It's totally different. He's totally friendly. He's not attached. He's walking. And he's not really attached. He just kind of likes to hang out, but he's not sucking energy, let's put it that way. He's not and the right word is attached, because what happens with attachments, and I've actually seen this with a number of paranormal investigators and children spirits, that it's because the paranormal investigator has a compassionate heart. They want to take care, they want to help, and sometimes these children need that help. So there's this little bit of agreement of like, oh, I need someone to help me. Oh, let me help you, that sort of thing. And then there's an attachment. There's actually a tendril that will connect that spirit to the human, and they'll share that energy back and forth. And I'm betting in your case, what you were probably picking up on is a bit of clairtangency. Like that boy may have had a stomach problem, like stomach cancer or some sort of stomach
Maybe.
issue. And that was sort of his way of communicating with you, is like, ooh, can you take this pain? And you're like, I'd love to take that pain. I'd love to alleviate your suffering. So you were taking that on, not consciously, but
Mm.
energetically at the unconscious level. You were willing to take that on to try to alleviate that pain because you're a good person. You're trying to release that suffering. And it took some some work. We let those spirits go to where they could better cross over and get the healing that they really need, and then
Mm.
that will help detach them from us. It's not like an exorcism or anything. It's more like, hey, here's people that'll love you, take care of you, Why don't you go with them instead? And then us also individually going, I release and I let this go so that I'm no longer here to help you in that way because it's detrimental to me.
Yeah. And it was pretty incredible because once he moved on, my pain went away.
Mm-hmm.
It was totally gone, and I felt so much relief. But I also wonder because I only found this out through my grandfather. My mother and father never told me about this, but my mom had had a child before me that had passed away. So I often wonder if I ever interact with what would have been my older brother.
I don't know. That one's not coming through too clearly right now, but that is possible. I know people have had interactions with people who've died, as babies and such, that they've somewhat stuck around a little bit. It's
Yeah.
possible.
Mhm. I've experienced things all through my life. I've always tried to, kind of poo-poo it, I guess you'd say. And one thing was I often would hear voices, and I just took it as it was my mind playing tricks on me. And I thought, man, that's really cool. I wish that happened again. And it every once in a while it would. And then as I got into the paranormal and getting to know these psychics, they told me, no, you were actually hearing spirits. And they're telling me that I need to kind of hone in on that. And it would happen every once in a blue moon. Now I'm a little more open to maybe learning how to uh to improve those abilities. Do you help people do that?
Absolutely. I've even got an online course that I called uh, Paranormal Awareness, Building Your Paranormal Awareness, where I
Mm-hmm.
walk people through how to build and develop, your clairvoyance, your clairaudience, and then how to put it to practical use, to make sure that you're actually validating. And so it's a lot like what you're describing is when, let me put these pieces together here. So a way that I'll have somebody develop their clairaudience is to listen to an actual sound, like maybe they'll ring a bell or they'll play a little bit of music, and then stop the sound, close your eyes, and then replay it in your memory.
Mm-hmm.
Then go back into a time that you remember of the past few days where you heard a similar sound. Not that same one, but just listen to that sound in your memory. Then go to an imaginary time in the near future, a day or two in the future, where you're going to imagine you're hearing a similar sound, not the exact one, but a similar sound. And what you're doing is you're training your brain and your mind and your perception to be able to pick up audible information in different ways. So now when you ask your guides for a sound, you might hear an actual sound, or you might get the impression of a vibration, or you might get the auditory information of a sound. And what I mean by that one is with clairvoyance, sometimes we're not seeing an actual image, but
Mm-hmm.
we're getting visual information. We have like an impression of that image. Same way with sound. We'll sometimes get the auditory impression just of the information, but not really the actual sound. And then you explore what that sound means. You explore what does it feel like? How does that sound make you feel? And as you explore that, you just kind of let your mind free associate word from word. Just let those words come out to explain what that sound is. And the more you're doing that, the more you're training your mind to perceive sound from different levels of perception so that it can receive it in a different way. You're training your neocortex to be aware that it's receiving information rather than having to drive the bus, that it's just a passive receptor. And now you're also teaching your enteric nervous system, your visceral nervous system, the seat of intuition, to be able to receive and process that information and produce it in a way that you can be cognitively aware of not only that sound, but what that sound means and how it relates to communication. And so it's really something anybody can do. It's an easy thing to do. It just
Mm-hmm.
takes repetitive practice until you finally get it, until it clicks. And then you're like, oh, now you can tune it on and turn it off anytime you want to because you've built up the practice on how to do it.
When you're teaching folks about coexisting and communicating with the spirits, You also teaching them to be respectful, because I know you will watch some of these paranormal shows and they go in and they try to provoke spirits, and that just it irritates me because
Hmm.
it feels like it's very disrespectful and you're practically slapping them in the face. Uh, I mean, there's got to be an importance to letting people know to be as respectful to those that have passed on as you would be respectful to the person standing in front of you.
Exactly. And when we look at some of those paranormal investigator TV shows, we have to remember that the primary responsibility of any of those TV shows is to entertain you in some way to
Yep.
keep you watching till the next commercial.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why they'll do those little flashes of like a ghost coming up on the screen with a scary sound, or while they'll provoke the spirit or somehow and then act all scared when they hear a little thump across the room,
Yeah.
is they're entertaining you to watch the next commercial. And it's not a fair example of what it's like interacting with spirits at all. And the reason why I want to put that little soapbox out there is because I'm seeing more and more homegrown paranormal investigators trying to emulate what they're doing on TV.
Yes.
And the results are dubious because of it. Whereas if you go into a place and you respect that home and you respect the people that are living in that home, whether they're spiritual beings or physical beings, you still have that respect. Say, who are you? What's going on here? How can we connect? And my key rule of working with the paranormal is similarities attract and perpetuate. So if you're going to go in there provocative, you're going to go in there in a fear state, you're going to go in there like, oh, let's stir this up and get them going. Well, that's what you're going to have slapped back at you. But if you
Mm-hmm.
go in going, hey, who are you? What's going on here? Is there a way we can connect? Is there a way I can help you? You're going to have a much better interaction with what's going on. And that's what I mean by coexisting. You're not coexisting very well by going, hey, who are you? Make this thing go off. Oh, I'm going to get you. You're coexisting by going, who are you? Do you need help? Is there a way I can help you? What sort of stuff can we do to connect and going on here? And it's so much better of an outcome when you do that.
Yeah. These shows are teaching people bad habits, because
Big time.
I've gone in on investigations with other groups where they'll go in and they'll start doing that. I'm like, why are you, I mean, would you go to a party and say, hey, if you're here and you're hosting this party, then come over here and hit me, come over here and hit me. Like, you're not going to walk into a room like that. So
Right.
why would you do that to someone who's passed on? And what if you were stuck somewhere and you needed help getting out? Would you want to be agitated?
Exactly. No.
No, that's say they're teaching people bad habits, and I that's why they need to go and they need to get with someone who is seasoned and trained, not like you said, emulate what you're seeing on television. Most of that stuff you see on TV is fake. I'm sorry, it is. And they're just in it, like I said, for the entertainment factor.
Yep.
There are some legit people on TV. I can say I have actually investigated with some of them, and I
Indeed.
I know they're legit. And there have been some that have walked off shows because their producers want them to fake stuff, and that's not what we're here for. That's why I liked Ghost Hunters, because they usually try to figure out some other excuse for why this is happening. What you're seeing is actually lights being flashed by a car coming down the road. It's not orbs going around your house or what have you.
Exactly.
Uh,
Yep. I've
yeah.
got some friends that are on those shows, and I know exactly what you're saying. And there's some really good stuff on there. And I've heard some behind the scenes stuff of like the stuff that won't make it on the TV show is some of my friends do the really good stuff. They
Mm-hmm.
really are doing the helpful stuff, but they'll do that after the other people on the show do their other stuff that gets the show going. And my friends will be there, but then they'll do the stuff that's really beneficial and helpful. But admittedly, that makes for boring TV.
Yeah.
So it's not going to get on TV. But those of us who are doing this without the TV shows, who are doing it for real, we have a much better, much more interesting experiences that aren't scary and spooky and have people running out of the house at every time a book drops or something.
Yeah. So I've had friends say, "Why don't you try to get on one of those shows?" And I said, "I really don't want to. I'm sorry. I mean, if you're on TV and you're doing that, hey, more power to you. To me,
Mhm.
when they're trying to get you to just entertain, then it's more like you're taking the legitimacy of what we're trying to do away. Unless you've been on an actual investigation and gone through those hours of just sitting there in the dark, basically talking to yourself and trying to find natural explanations of what's going on, and then you actually do experience something you can't explain, people just don't, they won't know.
Exactly.
I hate it when you have to break somebody's feelings, or when you tell them, why you're hearing something going, sounds like it's rolling across the second floor when you're not there. Well, the on the second floor is a one of those big fax machines, and whenever it resets itself, the rollers go across it, and it sounds like a chair moving. That's what it is. Or, oh, I'm hearing voices at 2 o'clock in the morning every night. Well, you're actually a block away from a bar and it closes at 2 o'clock, so the drunks are coming out.
Yep, yep. I agree with debunking the mundane first. People tell me they have lights flickering in their house, and before I even go to the house, what does the electrician say?
Mm-hmm.
They get cold spots in the house. Do you have drafts coming in? We're going to look for the mundane, basic stuff. And if all of that's shored up, I'll go in and go, what's going on here? And then we'll see what happens. And there are times where I've gone into a house and I'm like, I'm not getting anything. There's nothing here. And there are other times where I go in the house and like, yep, we got to work on this stuff here and we got to work on that stuff. And I will say majority of the time that whatever's going on in the house is easily rectifiable by a shift in perception of the people living there. We just
Mm-hmm.
change their attitude to what's going on and give them some tools, some techniques to work on it. And if they're actually doing the work, they see much positive, much of a good benefit. But if they're not doing the work, it's nothing changes if you aren't changing yourself inside.
I always said, though, if I was to be a spirit one day, that I was stuck at a house and an investigator came in and says, "What's your name?" First thing I'm going to say is Puddentane. Ask me again, and I'll tell you the same. I want
That's
to be a jokester.
That's absolutely right. If somebody's like a prankster in real life, there's a good chance they're still going to be a prankster in the spirit world. Only now they can have a lot more fun. And this is one of the things that when I finally found a book by Allan Kardec, he wrote like a book of mediums and a bunch of other stuff. He was a scientist right as table tipping was starting to become all the rage, and he tried to debunk it. But then he
Mm-hmm.
found out there was something legitimate to these things, and he did debunk some seances. He did debunk some uh, table tipping, but then he found the reality of it and started to write books that were channeled books. He'd have groups of people get together and they do automatic writing or table tipping, and they would write basically channeled books on information, and a lot of the stuff that's written in those books match my experiences. I'm like, finally something is out there. And one of the things that gave me the biggest laugh is why, when you bring in like the preacher, it makes things worse. It's because if you got somebody in the house that's a prankster and a jokester, and now you bring in a priest to do the exorcism, they're going to go, right on, man. This is awesome. They're just going to stir it up even more. So it really comes down to that respect factor. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe you got a trickster or prankster in your house. Work together. Like, hey, I got friends coming over. You want to mess with them on the Friday night? That'll be great. You can work together and have fun with it.
And do you help people recognize those shysters out there?
Yeah. And the best way to do that comes in two different forms. And I know we don't really have the space and time here for it, but I'll give you the overview of what it is first off is realize that a good 70 to 80% of spiritual communication is emotion based.
Mm-hmm.
Like human beings, 70% of our communication is nonverbal, the tone of voice, body language, that sort of thing. Same way with spirits. The vast majority of it is nonverbal, it's energetic. And that energy turns into emotion. And so if you're talking with a spirit and it gives you the total creep out feel, it gives you the total something's not right feel, trust that. Trust that feeling and say, nope, I'm not working with you. Especially if they're going to ask you for something that feels uncomfortable to do, just don't
Mhm.
do it. The other thing to keep in mind is if they're the shysters that are out there, they're going to have a sense of urgency, a sense of immediacy with consequence. You've got to do this right now. It's got to happen. And if you don't do this, bad things are going to happen.
Yeah.
Whereas if you work with a higher level spirit, they've got eternity. They understand infinity. They don't have time like we do. They'll sometimes still ask you to do something silly, which I've seen, but there's no sense of urgency or consequence. They'll say, "Hey, here's something to think about or do," and you say, "No, I'm not doing that." They're like, "Cool, okay, it's your call." But here's
Mhm.
a good idea. Still go try this out, and then they'll poke you. They'll give you little hints along the way. But if you still say no, they're like, cool, it's your life. Where these little shysters are like, no, you got to go get that drink. You got to go do this. You got to go say these things. You got to go make that happen now.
And
It's
you
like,
got to
oh
bring me
gosh.
$500 right away, or I can't lift the curse off of you.
Right, right. That's exactly how you deal with that. It's just like, just in your own time, your own way. And when it comes to people doing this stuff, again, if they have all the answers, don't trust it. If they're
Mhm.
the only ones that can fix your problem, don't trust it. Because nobody has all the answers. Nobody can fix all the problems. But if they can work with you, work together, say, hey, I don't really know what this is. Let's figure this out together. And then they give you ways that you can do it yourself to empower yourself to work with it. Those are the kind of people that you want to work with that'll help you empower you to teach you how to work with it yourself rather than they're the only ones with the answer. They're the only ones that can fix it for you. That to me is a big red flag.
Yeah. Well, there's so many that are out there just to take your money. And when you finally realize that they were giving you the shaft all along, well, then they lose faith in anyone. They make it hard to trust you. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't think psychics were real for the longest time. I didn't. I went to one with a friend of mine, and we went up, and I gave the lady my money, and she was in this big rush, and she's like, okay, well, you're gonna meet the woman of your dreams, you're gonna get married, you're gonna have kids, you're gonna have a big house, you're gonna have a big car, and blah 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 blah
Mm,
blah. And I'm like, well, that just sounds like a generic, everybody hears this. Give me specifics here. Whereas I met the lady who's now working with us, and I went with all doubt. I only went because my wife wanted to go, and it's like, what have you. And when she looked at me and started telling me stuff, I wasn't there for a reading. I was just there to watch my wife. She started telling me stuff, specific stuff, made me think twice. And then working with her and her giving all this information to the client, and then the client calling me a couple of days later and say everything your psychic told me was true. Off the wall stuff that you just don't. I'll give you a quick example. I'll try to make this
mhm,
as fast as I can. But we went to one, and the lady had all this weird activity going on. And our medium says, you have an aunt that was excommunicated from the family. She did something that really upset the family, didn't want to have anything to do with her anymore. She had a child, neglected the child died, and that's what you have here. And she looked at us, she goes, oh no, there's nothing like that. There's nothing like that going on in my family. So in my head, I'm going up. Finally found, you're not always on spot here. And then the lady called me 2 days later and said, I talked to my mother, and she told me about an aunt that I had no idea even existed, who would go out and party and slept around. She got pregnant. She didn't give the kid the care that he needed, and the child passed away.
mm,
And I'm like, how do you get that specific unless you have abilities?
right.
She made me 100% a believer.
I love that. Yep, there's definitely some real stuff going on out there, and because of the vagueness of it,
Mm-hmm.
it's it's easy to fake. And that's sometimes where I feel bad about doing this is I can't work with names. Like I can't get a spirit's name at all. It's just a block that I have. It's too linear. And I feel bad sometimes because people like to have names, they want to have that validation. And if
Mm-hmm.
I try to go into the name territory, it shuts me down. And I'm like, I can't do that. But I'll tell you maybe what they looked like, how they acted, what's going on. And then we can put the pieces together from there. But my guys always told me I suck at names in the day-to-day world. Why would I even try names in the spiritual and the seance world? They said we don't really use them over here anyway, so why
Well,
bother? And it makes
yeah.
me sometimes feel like, am I pulling a fast one here because I can't get a name? But it's like, no, it's just how I work.
Well, when I first met our friend, I just left from my grandpa's house, and my grandpa just passed away. Mind you, just passed away. And I went with my wife because she really wanted to go, and I'm like, yeah, that's no problem. We can do that, and then we come back and meet with family, right? Go in, sit down. She looks at me and she said, "You had someone just literally just passed away." And all I could see is a name that starts with B. He was an older gentleman. He was a fatherly figure to you. And my grandpa's name's Byron. Okay.
Nice.
So even without that specific name, how does she know that nobody else knew except the family? How did she know that?
It's
We didn't
amazing
say
stuff.
anything.
That's amazing stuff.
So you do seances over Zoom?
I've done them over Zoom. At first, I was skeptical about it, and then I did a couple, and I'm like, oh, wow, hey, this is cool. It works. Yeah.
Well, if someone wants to learn from you and they can only do it by Zoom, how would they get a hold of you?
Absolutely. In fact, I would say over 90% of the people I talk with is via Zoom now. If you go to my website, kaedrich.com, and if you click on the services tab, you'll find the way to book sessions with me.
Hmm.
But then if you go to kaedrich.teachable.com, you'll find the online courses that I have available, everything from developing paranormal awareness to running seances to even shadow work. Shadow work's an important part of making paranormal coexistence so much better.
Well, and what about social media?
Oh yeah, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, you name it. Just type in my name, Kaedrich, you'll find me.
Well, I'm going to say that you're a pretty legit guy. I got to talk to you a little bit before we got started, and so I only let people on if I feel like they're legit. I feel like you're legit, and I say at least folks at least check him out. Talk to them. I mean, wouldn't hurt if you're interested in learning how to do seances. If you're interested in having one, check it out. Uh, and if he ends up being a shyster, well, then you come back and I'll pay you. How's that?
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I do my best not to be a shyster at all. I want people to have a legit, real experience. And I'll tell you, if I'm off, I'm off. There was like a time when I was doing a 2 hour seance, and the first hour of that seance, I was getting no hits. I was about ready to call it quits. I was about ready to say, okay, we're refunding everybody. And then all of a sudden, a lady's mom came through, and it was perfect hit. And she's rolled her eyes. She's like, "Oh, God, mom always comes through to seances whenever I'm here." And after that, the next hour was just like spot on. So yeah, even I have my days off, but I do my best to give you the best legit experience possible.
Is there any chance that we could maybe record a seance at one time?
Yeah, that's absolutely possible. You
Let's
betcha.
let's try to set that up. I would love to show people exactly what's going on and what to expect.
Heck yeah, I'm totally open for that.
Oh, that's awesome. Kaedrich, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and spending your time with us. And I hope that you'll get some traction from this. At least somebody reaching out to you and getting to know what's all about.
Thank you. I appreciate that. This was a great conversation. I thank you so much for having me on here. This has been really great.
Well, I look forward to the future and working with you again, man.
Absolutely. Me too.
And I also want to thank all of you out there. Now, if you happen by here and this is your first time, well, thank you for that. And I hope you'll come back. Please hit that subscribe button. For my regulars, I love y'all because you make it possible for me to do this. So until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
Po boy.